Hey guys, it's Candace.
And it's Elena.
And you're listening to Cousins on Crime. I said, are you ready? And you're like, yeah, but you're not. You are not ready. You're not ready.
No. Do I need to put my seatbelt on?
Go get your Bible and your rosary and your like whatever else. I don't know. I
don't like this. You know what?
You're not going to like it.
I'm just going to go and you can,
I'll tell the story to Sam.
Sam and Hank.
Yeah. Hank. Yeah. Oh my. This is like one of the worst stories I've ever told.
I don't want to.
We truly try not to highlight or like glorify the killers in our stories.
Right.
Because it's about the victims. But in this case, in order to tell those victim stories, we have to understand how they're linked.
Okay.
You know, serial killer cases, which is through this sick, psychopathic man. Every trigger warning is required for this episode. Physical and sexual abuse, bestiality,
oh my goodness,
child victims and child sexual assaults, just everything. So my friends who like to listen to this with their kids, this is not the one.
No.
I come back to it later.
If I do not respond, I've checked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lena's like, I see her. She's shifting in her seat. Anything and everything that could trigger you here, it's in here. It's a rough one. There's truly nothing I can say to prepare you for the depravity. It's just, I used a book called The Sadist, if that gives you any indication, by Carl Berg as my primary source for this episode. You can check the show notes for my other research materials. So let's get this over with. The spawn of Satan, Peter Kürten, was born in Cologne, Germany in 1883. He had a terrible start to his life, and you could say he almost didn't even have a chance at normalcy.
Oh no.
He was the first child born to a terribly abusive man who was an alcoholic, and then there was his mother. His father came from a terrible environment himself, and it was like that transgenerational family chaos carried right through into his own. Peter's father had 8 brothers and sisters, and most of them dabbled in drinking and violence. Peter's grandfather and grandmother were also alcoholics. So if that tells you anything about how his dad grew up, and he's now bringing it all down into his own family.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah, when you grow up with those kind of things going on, there is no right or wrong. Like when people are drinking underage, or when they're committing these crimes or being violent, the lines are just not there. They're not blurred.
That's normal for them.
Yeah, the lines aren't blurred. They're just not there. So when everybody's doing whatever they want, there's no moral compass for a child,
Oh, no.
Peter's mother was quite opposite from his dad. She came from a respectable family. Her father made an honest living. She had 5 brothers and sisters, so, she also had a lot of siblings, but they were all well behaved, and they all lived a really full, seemingly uneventful life.
Okay.
Peter grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment, and even though space was tight, his parents couldn't help themselves, so they had 12 more children.
Oh.
All of whom suffered abuse at the hands of their father.
Why? Just stop. Just stop, guys.
Yeah. Not just physical violence that you'd expect, like striking or throwing and breaking stuff, smashing windows, which he did. But Peter's father was also sexually violent as well. It's extremely heartbreaking to think of 13 children squished into a tiny space, like literally on top of each other with no like autonomy of any kind. And then you add violence and sexual abuse. Like, I would love to know what became of Peter's siblings. Like, that would be an amazing like case study.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And how they got on with the rest of their lives. Like, was there something in their biology that saved them? Was there a resilience, or was there something that
or someone that they met in their life that was like, oh,
exactly. Yeah. Like, I just wonder if they were okay at some point. But we'll get to what became of Peter and the absolute hell that he unleashed on so many lives. Now, the exposure to the sexual violence at such a young age, no doubt had an impact on Peter. As far as learning about sex, your parents are supposed to sit you down and give you that talk and explain what that means for you into your adulthood in a way that you can understand as a young adult or however old you are. But Peter didn't get that.
No.
He witnessed his dad sexually abusing his sisters and his mother.
Oh my gosh.
And that sort of like perverted, despicable version of a sexual encounter was his introduction to sexuality. Take what you want. And he would do just that. Now, in 1895, the family moved to Düsseldorf, Germany. His father worked as a molder, but they were very poor. Living in another one-bedroom apartment, all 15 of them. He recognized that his father, even at that young age, he recognized that they were poor because his dad was spending the money he made on alcohol.
Oh.
I mean, so Peter started stealing from women and small children, like about town when they were out shopping and stuff. He was like, I have to eat. Like, we've got to feed ourselves. He was caught once, but his parents intervened and there was no punishment at that time. Another shining example of the rules don't apply to us.
Oh, yeah.
He did have one small redeeming feature, though. In his early school years, Peter did well academically. I don't think it was because he tried. I think it was more of it just came easily to him and he did what was required and nothing more.
Okay.
But that was his early years. He spent a lot of time at school during those years because he didn't want to go home.
Yeah, I would say.
So he literally would stay in the school building and like sleep in there.
Oh, wow.
And like hide and sleep in there. And there was also like some nearby woods and he would sleep in there sometimes too.
I just wonder if he'd get in trouble when he got home. Like,
that's
where
what
have you
I
been?
was thinking. But you know what? His dad probably didn't even notice he was gone. Just with all the chaos, like just the amount of children and like they were obviously not nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's a good point. I wondered that too. But he was like, I'll be anywhere but here. So when Peter was 9 years old, he ended up forming a bond with a man that lived in his apartment building. And I don't mean like this man took him under his wing and like was like the father he never had. He was like the father he had. This man was also sexual deviant.
Oh my goodness.
He was a dog catcher. And he showed Peter how to have sex with dogs.
What?
Yeah.
Candace.
Age 9.
Candace.
I told you.
This is where I check out.
I told you. It's terrible. So also at age 9, Peter and some friends were in a boat and 2 of the little boys drowned. Peter would later claim that he pushed the first one overboard. And then when the other boy jumped in to try and save the drowning boy, that he jumped in and drowned them both.
Oh, okay.
It was just at the time ruled like a really tragic accident. So I don't know for sure what the details were to that because there was nothing to substantiate that years later. But given his behavior and the escalation into his adulthood and his adult years, I bet he killed them.
Yeah.
That's not funny. Not funny,
No.
but I bet. Speaking of escalation, as he entered adolescence, he was still having sex with dogs, but now he had added farm animals to his list of suitors. Goats, sheep, animals roaming around, anything he could get his hands on. But it gets worse. He was even more aroused if the animal was being stabbed.
What?
While he was having sex with it.
What?
Yeah.
I cannot.
I'm so sorry. This is almost over. Now, back at home, the chaos was at an all-time high. Except this time, the law got wind that his dad was raping his 13-year-old sister. By 1897, Peter had already run away from home when his father was arrested and imprisoned for 3 years. 3 years.
Yeah, that's enough. That'll do it.
3 years.
No, thank you.
Come on, Germany. Peter would also get his first taste of prison around this time because he started committing petty crimes. He was still doing the stealing, you know. According to Peter himself, he was homeless and he felt like he had to steal out of necessity to feed himself. So this was something he relied on when he was living at home, because he was like, if I don't steal that bread or if I don't steal that, I'm not going to eat or drink today.
Yeah.
So he got caught and he went to jail, but each time he was caught and jailed, they were really short stints. They were like a few days here, a week here. I think he did a stretch of like 6 weeks at one point, but he had a place to stay.
Okay.
And his dad wasn't pounding on him, so he didn't seem too bothered. Like, he didn't seem too deterred from getting caught.
Right.
To stop that behavior. He just kept doing what he was doing. Upon his release, he was like, I better straighten up. Just kidding. He didn't do that. Wouldn't that be great though? He was right back to his life of crime. He didn't give a crap. He was like, fine. I get fed in there.
Yeah.
Like, I get a bed in there.
Yeah, you're right.
He was breaking and entering in people's homes and was particularly fond of going into businesses where the owners lived in the flat above.
Okay.
You know, like a fish and chip shop.
Yeah.
You know, there's an apartment above it.
Just to see what he could get away with.
Yeah. So like he felt like it, and I said fish and chips. It's more common in Europe. It's really not too common in America that we have businesses where there's apartments above it, but that's so European. He felt like it was a lot more feasible to access people's homes through a business. So like if he goes into a dry cleaners and he's like, just like scoots over and makes his way up the stairs, you know, just like he felt like I'm less likely to get caught. And he started mixing things up because he was going outside of town to commit these crimes.
Oh.
He returned to the town where he was born, in Cologne, in the summer of 1913. Late one night, he was browsing the streets, trying to find a place to rob when he came upon an inn that had a tavern inside. He made his way inside and went up the stairs to the living quarters. He began opening doors, looking for something of value to take, until he reached a bedroom where 10-year-old Christine Klein was sleeping peacefully in her bedroom, in her warm, cozy bed.
Leave her alone, Peter.
Without a second thought, Peter pounced on her.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't even need to think about it. He's just like, yep. Grabbed her by the neck. The little girl woke up and struggled to break free, but she was no match for this Satan, evil, deranged psychopath that had just come into her room.
Oh my gosh.
He choked her until she passed out. He sexually assaulted her before slitting her throat. Peter remembered his first kill in detail and how the whole thing took less than 3 minutes. He even says that he didn't even lock the door behind him.
Wow.
It just all happened so fast. He snuck out and he was gone before anyone knew he was there.
Oh my gosh.
When the child was discovered the next morning, her family immediately thought it was her Uncle Otto who killed her, because he'd recently had a disagreement with the parents.
Oh no.
And he had made a threat to them, something like, "I'm going to get you, or I'll do something you'll never forget."
You don't say that stuff, guys.
Right, right. Also, nothing was taken from the scene, and there seemed to be no motive. Like, the Kleins didn't have enemies. Like, no one would have wanted to do this. So it just seemed like it must have been him. Like, there was no other, it wasn't pointing in any other direction. The day after he murdered the little girl, Peter returned to the scene of the crime, because they do that, you know?
Yep.
So he sits in a cafe across the street, sipping a cappuccino, whatever psychopaths drink, I don't know. And he's looking at the inn right across the street, and he was excited about the devastation that he had bestowed on this community. He had people sitting next to him at different tables chattering, "I can't believe, did you hear about the little girl?" And he was like reveling in all these in the glory of what his work.
That is so disgusting.
He felt this rush of satisfaction that he'd never known before, taking a human life. It was like this power of not just taking the life, but seeing the suffering that it caused everyone else.
Yeah.
So the reach of his devastation was overwhelmingly exciting to him. With no one linking him to this crime, Peter followed the news reports on the murder with obsessive interest. Yeah, and he watched as Otto Klein was arrested and charged with Christine's murder. He probably thought, "Whoa, that was lucky." Like,
ooh, now they're really off his back and he really got away with it.
Yeah, he didn't even live there. But the jury acquitted Otto.
Oh.
At his trial, because there just was no physical evidence. There was no real circumstantial evidence. All they had was that one heat of the moment comment that he made.
Yeah.
And so they're like, that's not enough. And I'm so thankful, because like, I feel like in the 1800s or 1913, I feel like that would have been enough.
Yeah.
Back in that day. But this jury said, no, we can't convict him on this. But the case went cold after that. There were no new leads, no witnesses, and Peter was long gone back in Düsseldorf. And I'm not so sure that the police had made up their mind, because sometimes investigators will be like, "We know who did it. He got off, but we know who did it." And so I don't know if they really truly believed it was him, and they just no longer worked on the case, but nothing ever came of that case. Yeah. Now, shortly after he murdered Christine, he set out to murder again. This time, he used a different weapon. One night, June 1913, he was out walking in Gerresheim, I hope I'm saying that right, when he approached Holy Trinity Church. He entered the cellar and took an axe. Around 11 p.m., he saw a girl walking alone down a corridor, and he got up on her and struck her with one blow to the head. She went down without even realizing what happened to her. I don't know if she lived. Right. I assume she lived, because the book didn't count her as a victim. Okay. Like, counted her as a victim of the attack, like as an attack, but
not as murdered.
Right. Now, similarly, the next month in July, he walked up on a man sitting on a park bench and hit him in the head with the axe. And again, this man didn't see it coming. He just collapsed over on the side. And
What?
but again, I think he lived, because like her, he wasn't counted as a victim. And Peter just hits him on the head and walked away before setting a cart
So brazen.
on fire.
On fire.
He sees this hay cart and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to set that on fire just to kind of add to the
chaos.
Yes, exactly. Now, a couple of days later, he broke into a home that he'd actually robbed before.
Oh.
So he knew where he was going.
Okay.
He entered a room where a teenage girl was sleeping. He raised the axe.
Oh, no.
And just before he could let that axe down, a man rushed into the room. I don't know if it was her dad or what, but Peter immediately threw the axe down on the bed and ran out of there. But he was being chased by Daddy or whoever that was.
Why not fight back, you little coward?
Yeah. But Peter got away because he's a slippery, slimy
that little girl
snake.
Was saved. Thank you.
Yeah. But Lena,
wow.
None of that was enough. Like, he I don't know, like, I'm sure he found out that these people didn't die. That wasn't good enough for him. Now, later the same month, still in July, he used a skeleton key to enter a house, and he started through the house. Isn't that scary? Like, back then when you had skeleton keys and you're just like, oh, this key opens every single lock. So he comes to this room where there are 3 beds, and he strangled 17-year-old Gertrude Franken and then went home.
Oh.
He strangled her until she passed out and then went home.
There was 2 other people in there, though?
There was 2 other people in those beds.
That did not wake up.
I don't know if they woke up, but they didn't see him, and he left.
Okay, bye.
And I believe she survived because, again, she was not listed as a victim of murder. The following year, in 1914, Peter was drafted into military duty when World War I began, but he didn't like to be told what to do.
Of course.
And that's what the military kind of does.
Yeah.
They got rules. He made the rules for his own life.
Sure. Yeah.
And this structured expectation of living in barracks, making your bed every day, falling in line, those were major inconveniences to him. So he just left.
Okay.
He opened the barracks doors and he just walked out. Well, when they found him, because they went looking for him, he was imprisoned. And oddly enough, this prison stay would be the longest so far because the military don't take too kindly to somebody abandoning their regime.
Right. Going AWOL.
I don't know. Is that it? The regime? I don't know. If Peter was thinking that this prison would be similar to those little petty theft stays that he did years ago, he was sorely mistaken. Mm-hmm. He was tortured.
Wow.
He was chained up like an animal. And one time he was in chains for like 3 weeks straight. He was paraded around and mocked. Like they would have these councilmen and like people come into the prison to like, I don't know, tour it or see it or discuss. I don't know what they were doing there, but they would parade prisoners in front of these people that would visit.
Oh my
and
goodness.
He was one of those people. And they would torture him in front of them. I know none of us are feeling bad for him right now. Like, because he deserved every single thing that he got. And he didn't behave himself in there either.
Well, I wouldn't think so.
I mean, he was put in solitary confinement because he was such a danger to everyone else.
Yeah.
And that time alone really nurtured his sexual fantasies.
Oh, jeez.
Bordering on obsessive, and his sexual deviance turned violent at that time. He'd purposefully misbehave and break the rules so that the warden would put him back in solitary confinement so he could be alone with himself.
Oh, well, that's better than...
Yeah, it is. Like, hurt yourself. Why don't you?
Yeah.
He was released from prison in April of 1921, 7 weeks ahead of his original release date.
Oh, how?
So while he was a total turd nugget the whole time he was in there, he ended up saving a prison official from an attack. There was like, I don't know if it was a riot or something, but he ended up pulling him out of there. So they were like, thank you for your services.
No.
And they shaved time off of his sentence.
No.
Yeah, they did. But they were as stupid as the people who let Kenneth McDuff out.
Oh, yeah.
He had a long time in there to think about what he was going to do when he got out.
Absolutely.
Because he had found this like, oh, I can kill and get away with it.
Yeah.
And there was no rationale in his mind. It was just like, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel good. That excites me.
Yeah.
I'm doing that again, And then when he was in solitary and he started making up all these new ways to like inflict pain on himself, he thought, I can do this to other people. And that's going to make me feel good too. So he was ready to raise some hell. He was ready when they let him out. He ended up moving to Altenburg to live with his sister and find work. Sounds weird. Okay. He got a job at a factory. He met a woman that was acquainted with his sister, a woman named Frau. She was also a murderer.
No. How does this happen?
Birds of a feather. So she had been dating this gardener who promised to marry her. Like, she dated him for years. But after year 8, when he wouldn't marry her, he left her high and dry. So she shot him.
Whoa.
And she served 5 years in prison.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years in prison. Yeah, no big deal. So when he met Frau, she didn't really like him.
Oh.
She was friends with his sister.
Okay.
And he was like, if you don't sleep with me, I'm going to push something in between your ribs.
Oh.
And she was like,
is that how you get a girl?
All right. Okay. You got me. And they were married a couple years later. Isn't that romantic?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how Daniel got me. So Peter worked as a molder in that factory, and he built a little profession. I mean, he actually was getting involved in like the union and politics. And it seemed like for the first time in his adult life, he was settling into some kind of a normalcy.
Which was probably odd for him. Not normal.
Yeah, it was. But it wouldn't last long.
Yeah. He's like,
as you can imagine.
I can't do this. It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah. He drifted back over to Düsseldorf in 1925, which was about a 5 hours drive from Altenburg. And after a short separation from his wife, she reconciled and joined him in Düsseldorf. I'm not clear
she
on...
said, I miss you, baby.
What could she have possibly missed? I'm not clear on what the separation was, like what it was about, but like, pick something. I mean, he's terrible. You could find anything wrong with him. As you can probably imagine, marriage did not make a man out of him. He had all these things that he was going to do.
I just wonder if like when he left, if she was like, oh, I can breathe now. Or if she just, did he treat her really well? Like, I would like to know that.
In the book, she says sometimes things were good and sometimes things were bad. She said sometimes we'd have sex and sometimes he'd have sex with me when I didn't want it. Like, which is rape.
Right.
Just so you know. But was it the time? Was it like that day and age where it's just something that women put up with?
True.
Or I don't know. I don't know. But He had extramarital relations. Apart from the sexual assaults, he actually had people that were consensually having an affair with him. What? Like full-on affairs with 2 different women.
Whoa.
Tied and Met. Now, his wife forgave him for the explosive outbursts and the cheating. So this separation could have been for any of those reasons. But back in Düsseldorf now, he's living there. She's living there. This is where his crimes really ramped up. He attacked a sex worker named Maria Kiefer in the summer of 1925. He made an appointment with her. She provided her services to him. And after that, he just grabbed her by the throat and started strangling her.
Oh.
But she broke free. She didn't report it to the police, maybe because of her line of work, but she stayed quiet. She didn't say anything. In between the attacks, Peter continued his petty theft. And now he was setting the fires because he liked the way that was. Like he liked blowing up that cart of hay. Barns, carts of hay, houses, farmland, anything that would just go up in flames. For whatever he felt like setting fire to. He was exploring new ways to inflict pain and suffering on people in his community.
Yeah, I'd say that's Satan himself.
Giving him something to talk about, something he could overhear, in the street. Now, in June of the following year, 1926, he met a woman named Maria Wack. They went out a couple times. Mind you, he's still married to his wife this whole time.
Jeez.
And Maria said he was a gentleman.
Sure.
The couple times she was with him. Until one night, as they're walking by these woods, he took her over to this park bench and just threw her down and tried to sexually assault her. There were some people walking by at the time, so when Maria resisted Peter's violent advances, he ran away.
Oh,
he just ran off. And actually, he took her hat and ran, but then realized he took her hat, so he came back and dropped his hat and got his hat and ran off. Now, this guy, he really could be with any woman that he wanted to. Like, he apparently, I'm not going to say he's attractive, but other people thought he was attractive. It wasn't about the sex. It was about control.
Control, right.
And when and where he decided. He was impulsive, and it was like, we had a great night. We had a nice dinner. I'm walking you home. But no, I'm going to ruin it right now.
Right now. Like, now's the time.
Yeah. He just couldn't help himself. Now, the following summer of 1927, he took up with a new woman named Annie Ist. Just like Maria Wack, they went out a couple times. They had consensual relations more than once. But her saying yes to him was too easy and cordial. Like, where's the fun in that?
True.
So he tried to strangle her and beat her in the head.
Gosh.
And like Maria Wack, she escaped.
Good.
Except Annie continued to see him.
Oh, she's like, it's okay.
She's like, nah.
I still like you.
Yeah. What? So she only broke it off with him when she found out that he was married. Beating and strangling, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I forgive you. Adultery, now that's a deal breaker right there. Now, Peter must have felt unsatisfied by this point. I don't think he intended to kill the women that he strangled, because I think he would have killed them.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was just like an assertion of dominance, because he didn't bring a weapon with him those times. Like, he didn't, at least no weapons were mentioned in the reports, but he couldn't stop thinking about that little girl that he had killed all those years ago, Christine Klein. He remembered every detail, which he recounted in the book. And I just I just gave you the cliffity cliff notes of
thank you. Thank you for that.
He remembered every single second from the time he entered that ground floor to the time that he ran out of there and nobody knew. And he wanted to feel that again.
No. Ugh.
And that's where I'm going to leave you for part 1.
Okay.
I broke this up into 2 smaller episodes because it's horrifying.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And I almost didn't even want to tell this story, but when you shy away from this type of individual, the victims vanish.
You're right. Yeah. I
mean, and I'm just like, let's say their names. Like, there's not much reported on the victims either.
Yeah, so and it's not like you can tell of their sweet life.
Yeah, I know. And it's so sad. So y'all go pray, get your heart right.
I sure will.
And we'll give you a week to recover before we finish the atrocities of Peter Kürten.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well,
I know. Terrible. I'm so sorry. Like, I know that was rough. We need a break.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Candace. Thanks for the break. That was not good, but we'll do it again next week.
Yeah. We'll do it. See you later, guys.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Cousins on Crime. Get connected with us by becoming a free member on our Patreon. Or for just $5 a month, you'll have access to bonus episodes, discussion groups, and much more. If you can't afford $5 a month, we get it. Inflation, am I right? Please consider leaving us a positive review and rating wherever you listen.
And don't forget merch. Support our podcast and show the love by sporting t-shirts with our latest designs, or grab an evidence bag to keep the chain of custody for all your valuables. Don't forget to follow our show on your favorite streaming app so you never miss an episode, and get photos and updates on our Instagram at Cousins on Crime Podcast or our Cousins on Crime Facebook page. Have a case suggestion? Email us at cousinsoncrime@gmail.com.